but it looks like we've got quite a few other members of our group today. Lee, what's wrong? But how is everybody doing?
Fine.
All right. Okay, that's good. I haven't seen most of you all in a while. I saw Colton and Catherine at cats are fighting now. I saw Colton and Catherine at our week-long camp a couple of weeks ago, and Ashley was there a little bit. I think it looks like Alyssa isn't with us today. I saw her at some event. I can't remember where that was. And a couple of other of you guys I've been talking to on email. But I wanted to make sure we got back together. We haven't talked about Pollinator Pals in a while. It's been an incredibly busy couple of months. I know for me, probably for you guys as well. I know some of you guys were busy about a month and a half ago or so, visiting some schools and talking to school kids. And it looks like I think we're supposed to talk to, it was either 200 or 250 kids at a minimum, and we're getting close to that number already. We'll still try to do a few more of that kind of stuff. But right now, we really need to get talking about our pollinator gardens and how to sort of design and build them. That's going to be our next step. One thing that I want to emphasize is that this pollinator garden does not have to be perfectly finished by kind of the end of summer or the middle of fall, but it does kind of need to be sort of put in place. So it needs to be kind of, the spot needs to be chosen. We need to have, if we need to put dirt in, we need to do that. If we need to put any railroad ties or rocks around it, we need to do that. And we probably need to plant some of it, but it doesn't actually have to be perfectly in place and blooming and attracting pollinators by the end of this year. We just need it to be basically ready to go for next year, and hopefully some things planted so that by spring or early summer of next year, it's up and running a little bit. But that's sort of where we are. And please, you guys, go ahead and ask questions as we go along here. This is really your project. So we want you guys to be involved. We want you guys to help make decisions. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and open my PowerPoint here. Does anybody, in fact, have any questions before we get started here? Oh my gosh, Alex says the Clark County Pollinator Garden is already in place. Alec, can you explain that? Do you guys already have one there? Hello. I know Alex here because he wrote something in the chat. I know that Alec was going. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is the academy people? So you guys already did that? Yes. Wow. Well, I want to come see it. So Clark County is not too far from me. Let me know where it is, and I'll come take a look. And since it's already there, we can go ahead and like try to get some signage ready and that kind of stuff. That's really cool. But yeah, at some point, maybe put into your they kind of did it without you. Well, that's okay. We'll still have stuff for you to do as a part of the ongoing process of the pollinator garden. Yeah. So in Clark County, there happened to be a handful of students there who are also part of the Natural Resources Academy that some of you guys have done in the past. And so they were working, their project, their community project happens to be a pollinator garden. And so Alec has teamed up with them to build one. All right, so we are making progress. Nice. But if no one has any other questions right now, I'm going to share my screen if it will let me. Okay, it looks like it's letting me do this here. All right, so hopefully you remember who we are. We are the Pollinator Pals, and we are 4-H, and we are funded by Cortiva. Wanted to remind you of sort of where we are in our timeline. So of course this is basically our last training. There'll still be training here and there, kind of informally, as I come visit you guys and over email and stuff. But this is kind of our last formal training. And of course, we already went to DC. And then the part that's there in late spring, I didn't cross that out yet because we aren't totally finished with our educating younger kids, but we did a whole bunch of that already. So a lot of that has been done. And now the next step is the big circle down there, which is summer, which is where we are now. In fact, I have to keep I feel like summer's been going on a long time, but I have to keep reminding myself that summer actually started officially about 2 days ago. The first day of summer is June 21st. So we're just at the beginning of summer, people. We have all the time in the world, right? But that's the stage we're on now, which is the social media part. We were, which is what's happening right now. I know some of you have been following Kentucky Bugs on Facebook. We've been putting the social media posts that you guys wrote for us. We've been putting those up. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but we can continue doing that. We would love it because we are getting a lot of hits, a lot of views on that. So that's the part where we're on now. And of course, we are also at the plan and begin installing pollinator gardens section. That's what we're talking about today. And then in the fall, we'll hopefully complete at least the building part of those pollinator gardens. We'll probably do a little bit more educating to our younger people out there, and then we'll do follow-ups and evaluations. So even though it feels to me like we're running behind, we're actually pretty much on track on our plan here. We just got to make sure to keep on trucking. So our next steps, what we're going to do right now, not really tonight. It feels like tonight to me. It's been a long day, but these cats are still fighting each other. We're going to talk about how to plan and build your pollinator garden. Some of the things you guys need to do during the rest of June and part of July. I'm going to give you a specific timeline here at the end, but we're going to try to identify a location for your pollinator gardens. We're going to try to procure some volunteers and experts to help you. We're going to lay out the garden, and then we are going to help you to buy materials, the stuff that you need to build those gardens. And then later in the summer and in the fall, you'll be installing and planting those gardens. And some of this stuff may happen faster for you, like it did with Clark County. But so you may be done sooner than that. Some of these things you might find, if you get it all sort of going and get your volunteers in a row, you might be able to get a lot of this stuff done in like one day. It'll just be a really long day. Other news. So we owe the National 4-H group. So that's Beth, who you guys might have met in DC. We owe them kind of a midterm report next week. And so what I need from you is to send me any statistics that you have. In particular, how many kids did you talk to in May about basic pollinator stuff? How many of those little bags with trowels and pollinator seeds did you give away? Whoops, I used the word HOW because that's been on my brain. I always use the words HOE because that's been on my brain because I'm talking about hose later in this talk. How many bags of those pollinators kits did you give away, and where are you already on your future pollinator garden? So that's some news. And also we're trying to make t-shirts for you guys. Hopefully they're going to have the Cortiva logo, a 4-H logo. They're going to say Pollinator Pals. One thing I wanted to ask you, Ashley, I meant to ask you this over email, is if maybe we can get in touch with those three people from Clark County. I think it was Megan, Madeline, I can't remember their names, who are working with Alec, and maybe we can kind of make them honorary Pollinator Pals as well and get them some t-shirts.
I sent you an email, Blake, with some more information about that garden. So
I
meant to do it sooner, but I just didn't. So
that's okay.
You can read through it, and then I'm out next week, but when I get back, we can talk. But yeah, it was Mila Leisure, Mila Leisure, Matthew, and Megan. So there are three of them. So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Nice. Also, we might even ask them if they could kind of be official Pollinator Pals. We could have them look through the old trainings and do a couple of other things.
Yeah.
And that might help them with their resumes or whatever. So we're doing t-shirts. And where we are right now is National Pollinator Week. It started July or June 20th and is going until I think the 26th. So those have been going up. I've been putting up one a day from each of you guys. I'm gonna try to put everybody's up. I think we put Colton's up yesterday because he happened to be talking specifically about Pollinator Week, but otherwise we're just sort of interspersing them through there. But you can keep sending me these. These are great for our Kentucky bug site. We're getting about 500 hits a day from your all's posts, which is really good. So we would like them to keep coming. You can also get a little more creative with it if you want to create some graphics, more pictures. But what you guys have been doing so far is really nice. So in our first 3 days here, we have over 1,600 views, and I haven't put the one up for today yet, but we'll probably get more views for that. Like I said, you could also, these are all going up on Facebook because what you guys have been sending me are mostly kind of Facebook type posts with text and pictures. But like I said, I think one person has sent me a video. I'm going to try to put that up. And then, but if you guys want to get really creative and make a video, you still have time to do that as well. If you're unsure about a topic or something, just email me. If you're unsure, maybe if somebody else has already done a topic and you don't want to repeat it, just ask and we'll help you with that stuff. So now we are talking about planning, building, and maintaining your pollinator garden. Very important part, the maintaining over a long term, your pollinator garden. One thing I want to emphasize with you guys is I am not a gardener. So I've actually been dreading this a little bit. I was initially planning maybe not even to do a training on this and have our trainings be more like I would just come to you and we would sort of learn together how to put in these gardens. But I thought it was important at least to get together over the computer one more time. But I do want to emphasize, I don't know how to build a garden. I've never really done it before. Even in my yard, I've put a couple of plants in, but I've never planned a whole garden. Ashley now has built some gardens. She's done some of those rain gardens and a few other things. So she'll be able to guide us a little bit. But even though I have never done this before and you haven't done it, it doesn't have to be super difficult. A lot of it is just deciding where it's going to go, learning a little bit about your site, getting a couple people to help you, using a few resources, and then you just kind of put it in. There's going to be some digging and some physical labor, a little bit of planning, but this is something that all of you guys can do. You're going to have to do a lot of the work though on your own. You're going to have to find some of these experts and volunteers to help you because these are going to be people that I don't know. They're going to be people from your county and businesses from your county that you're going to have to identify. We can help give you ideas on where those people might be, but we don't know those people. Like the horticulture agents in your county, we might not know them personally, or the places that sell plants and seeds in your county. We might be able to help you figure those out by just digging around on Google, but you'll probably have to go and talk to those people on your own. So this is going to be kind of your garden. So I did want to mention that a lot of this stuff that I'm telling you guys about planning and designing a garden is stuff that I've just learned on my own the past couple of days, and it's not very technical what we're going to learn tonight. A lot of this stuff is just logical. It's just thinking in order. It's just taking it step by step. But think about where your garden site is going to be. And I know a lot of you, several of you guys have already thought about this and made plans. And those of you who have told me where you're going to put it, you're probably good. I think those places are good places. But we want a place where you're going to have, for one thing, you have to have permission to build it there. I think that kind of goes without saying. You can't just go put it on the side of the highway somewhere, even though that might be a good spot in some cases. You've got to make sure you have permission from whoever controls that land to put the garden there. You want to get a place with a lot of foot traffic if possible, a place where people are going to be coming and going. So there might be some very beautiful places like back in state forests or something that would be a good place to put a pollinator garden. Might actually help the pollinators a lot, but maybe they don't, maybe no one or very few people go back there. That might not be the very best place, although that could be a possible place too. You want a place with sunshine. Most of your pollinator plants are kind of sun-loving kinds of plants. They put out flowers. Pollinators like a lot of heat, kind of gets them moving around. So you do want sunshine. You can have sites that are sort of part sun, part shade, or that are shady part of the day and sunny the other times, but most of your pollinator gardens are going to be in some sunshine. You need at least some decent soil. A place where a garden has already been put in is probably going to have good enough soil. But there are some places like my front yard. If I were to try to put a garden in on my front yard without preparing it at all, it would be like trying to plant seeds in concrete, because my front yard is mostly kind of just sort of a clay, kind of clay particles. Grass will sort of grow there, but not very well. So you need good soil. You might have to either put dirt in yourself or find a place where some soil is already pretty good. You also need a place that's going to be easy to maintain over time. Think about this. Some of you guys are already, I think in some cases, some of you guys are seniors in high school. So you might not be in Kentucky next year. So you need to think about a place that's going to be easy to maintain. So, you know, your own farm might not be the best place to put in a pollinator garden. You're going to be needing to plan ahead on who is going to be maintaining this site over time. So it needs to be a place where people have access to, a place where you can get to it from a road fairly easily, from a sidewalk fairly easily, a place next to a business or another operation that has people there who might be able to help you. Another thing to think about is the size of it. We're asking you to have a minimum size of about 100 square feet, which is actually very small. That's 10 by 10 feet. I'll explain the reason for that exact size here in a little bit. We hope that it would be bigger than that. But for many of you, this might be the first garden you've ever installed. So something along those lines might be a good size. Or what I kind of imagine is a good sized garden for you to shoot for would be one that's about the size of a room, like a small bedroom. It doesn't have to be the exact same shape as a bedroom. It could be longer than that, maybe only about 6 or 7 feet deep and longer than that, like wide around the side of a building, but at least 100 square feet. Another thing to think about, is your site going to be wet or dry? Usually you can figure that out by kind of looking at it. If the place you're planning to put a garden is kind of a little up higher, right up next to the edge of a building, it's probably going to drain fairly well, hopefully, unless that building is prone to flooding, in which case it's going to be kind of stay dry up there. If it's down in more of a ditch closer to the road or closer to a drainage area, it might be wet, and that will influence what kind of plants that you're able to put in there. Another thing to think about is this a place that's likely to get vandalized? I was just driving through downtown Lexington today, and I've noticed some places where the city has put in little pollinator plots. It looks pretty cool, and so far they're in good shape. I don't think anybody's vandalized them yet, but late at night, you know, somebody wandering back from one of the restaurants in downtown might, you know, take a nap there or something and destroy some of those plants. So think about a place that maybe is secure at night, like the outside of an extension office, probably not very likely to get vandalized. Some place that's right in the middle of downtown, maybe a little bit more likely to get vandalized. That shouldn't stop you, but that's just something to think about, especially with long-term maintenance. Another thing to think about, is this a place where you can drive a vehicle up to it? You might have to, especially if you're going to have to add soil to your pollinator garden, you might have to have a vehicle drive up and unload some soil. So is this a place where you can physically do that? Most extension offices, the answer would be yes, you could probably do that. But think about that. If this is a place that's deep behind a building, like behind a library or something, or a courtyard or something where you can't get a vehicle in there, that doesn't mean you can't put a pollinator garden in, but it might be difficult to get some of those supplies in. Also, is there a hose nearby? Many times, especially when you put in a very new plant, like a young plant, or if you plant seeds, sometimes they need to be watered right away. So you might need access to water. So if you're putting a pollinator garden way out in a remote area, like on maybe a hiking trail that gets a lot of traffic, that might be a really good place for a pollinator garden, but you might not have water access. There's ways that you could possibly get water out there, like a water truck or something, but that would be an additional thing to think about. So be thinking about, is there a water source nearby, both for planting and long-term maintenance? Some of these pollinator gardens might need a little bit of water during droughts. So think about if there's a water source nearby. And if you all will pardon me for a moment, I'm going to let my one cat out so they will leave each other alone for a little bit. Okay, come on, kitty cat. Come on, you're going to go out this door. Come on, here you go. Okay, peace reigns once again. Once again, here's some ideas for garden sites. This isn't an exhaustive list. You might have better ideas than this. And if you've already decided a place, that's probably a good place. The place that's the easiest to put in a garden might be the very best one, but here are some ideas. So your extension office, a lot of extension offices already have a garden. And in some cases, those gardens were built by somebody maybe who worked there 5 or 6 years ago and doesn't work there anymore. And now it's just kind of sitting there with some weeds in it and stuff, but maybe the soil's already nice and kind of soft and can be, and you can dig it up, dig up the old plants. A place like that might be a really good place to put in a pollinator garden, or they might have a garden that's just decorative plants, and you could just add a handful of new plants to it, turn it into a pollinator garden. There's also a lot of the extension offices will have kind of a row of hedges and stuff, just sort of like juniper plants, boxwood plants. You might be able to talk your extension staff into saying, hey, can we just kind of rip out those boxwoods and put in a pollinator plot there instead? And they might be willing to let you do that. In that case, the soil might already be pretty nice for a pollinator garden, or you might just be able to extend an existing garden. So that an existing garden is a good place to start because presumably they already have some soil there, they already have water access. It's a good site for a garden, that kind of thing. A local school might be a good spot. Once again, they might have a neglected garden that was built a few years ago by some enterprising students or by a former staff member that could be sort of rebuilt or converted into a pollinator garden. And of course, being a part of a school, like an elementary school or a middle school, would be really nice because they could use that pollinator garden for education over time, and they probably would. If a school has that, sometimes they're not very good about maintaining those, but they do use them. They usually take the kids out and look around and do things with them. So a local school would be a good thing. A really cool spot for you guys to put in a garden site. This would involve a little bit more kind of wheeling and dealing on your part, but I would love it if somebody could work with a local business or one of these many bank branches that are around in all of your communities and use their space. If you think about a local bank, they get foot traffic. They always have decorative plants around the building, but a lot of times they're just, once again, these junipers and boxwoods, these plants that don't have any pollinator value. Maybe you could talk one of these businesses into allowing you and your group to put in and maintain a pollinator garden over time. They might even, who knows, might even loan you some dollars for this because it looks good for them because they're helping out local kids. They're helping out pollinators. Put up some signs there, explain what's going on. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, and you're having trouble convincing them, talk to us. But really, you guys would have the power there. Just imagine this bank and a group of 4-Hers walk in. Please, sir, please, we are just 4-Hers from the local county, and we would love your help to build a pollinator garden for the poor pollinators out there. You could be very convincing in that situation. But you will need help throughout this process. So here are some of the helpers that you might need for the different stages of this project. So the first thing you're going to have to do is obviously select a site, design what your garden's going to look like, and pick out plants. Some people who can help you there should be people in every one of your counties that can help you with this. But some of the people would be master gardeners. Most of your counties are going to have a master gardener chapter. We've talked a little bit about master gardeners before, but if you're not familiar with them, Master gardeners are adults who come to the extension office and they take courses to learn how to be better gardeners. And then they are also expected, once they get certified as a master gardener, to put in so many hours of volunteer work every year afterwards. And so helping young people like you install and maintain a garden would be right up their alley. In fact, as long as you can find and locate these people and talk to them, they will probably be very excited to work with young people, and they will teach you gardening skills, and it gives them a chance to meet enterprising young people, and they're usually a very enthusiastic crowd. Other help that you can get would be your horticulture agent. So some of the counties, especially the larger counties with sort of bigger populations, will have a horticulture agent. This is somebody in your extension office whose job is basically to help people with gardening topics. And this person would be a very knowledgeable person to help you with things like how to select the plants that you need, how to find a site for your garden, how to physically lay out the shape of your garden. They can also help you figure out what kind of soil you have and that kind of thing. Master gardeners can do this a lot too, but a lot of times your horticultural agent is physically there in the office. So you might be able to find them a little easier. Also, your horticulture agent will be able to put you in touch with master gardeners if you have them. And another place to go would be a local greenhouse or nursery. And what that means, as a non-gardener, when I hear the word greenhouse, I just think of a building. And then when I hear nursery, I think of a child's room. I'm not a gardener. But what those words mean to gardeners are businesses. A greenhouse or a nursery, these are businesses that sell people garden plants. And there are a lot of these in Kentucky. There are a lot of really big ones. And most of these will have extremely knowledgeable people who, once again, you come in, a couple of kids, and you say, please, sir or madam, you have so much knowledge about gardens. We are lowly 4-Hers. We just need your help in designing this garden. You might find that they are very willing to help you both with designing and planning, and possibly also giving you a couple of things. They might give you a couple of seeds or a couple of plants, a little bit of sponsorship, that kind of thing. Very worthwhile places to go. And then the next stage, once you've kind of designed and selected your plants, you need to physically build and plant that garden. This is going to be just sort of labor. You're going to be raking, you're going to be ripping up grass, possibly. You're going to be pouring out new soil. You're going to be pulling out old plants. And for this, you'll need like a little bit of a work crew. You might have some parents and other family members helping you. You might have friends. You might have other 4-Hers. You might be able to recruit younger school kids to come and help you. Master gardeners can also help with this. They can help with some of the physical parts as well, or at least come there and kind of tell you what to do, which would probably be the case if I were there. And a master gardener was there, they would tell me what to do, and I would do the digging. The pollinator pals can help you. What if you guys coordinated so that maybe the one county can come help one county install a garden one day, and then the other day you guys can shift places and help each other out at a different county. And then I'm willing to help you as well. You'll have to contact me in advance because I'll need to get it on my calendar. But I am definitely willing to come and help you physically do some of this stuff. I've got a small SUV. We can use that to drag stuff around. I'll help do as much as I can with digging and ripping out old shrubs and stuff. So I can help you do that if you plan in advance. So the physical planning and planting the garden, that's something that you will need to do. And then long-term maintenance. Once again, you guys may not be here in a year or two, so we need these gardens to remain viable. We need them to look pretty and to be helping our pollinators over time. So the long-term maintenance can once again come from those master gardeners. This could become a project that they work on over many years. Or if you already are a part of a 4-H club at your extension office, those future 4-Hers can take this on as a project. Another possibility are just the people who work in whatever buildings are close by. If you are building this at an extension office, it could be that some of those extension staff help to maintain it over time. Or if you do it at a local school, those teachers and students might help maintain it over time. And what you will be doing here is essentially kind of cobbling together a committee. And I'll show you where you actually kind of need to write that down and plan who those people are. And this committee will be kind of in charge of this garden over time. When you are off in your junior year of college, you may never hear about this project again. Of course, it would be nice if you went back, but I think the anticipation here is you are kind of planning and building, and other people are maintaining it over the long haul. So a little bit about how to find these experts. I think that you guys can probably do this fairly easily, but you really are going to need experts and help for this. And my suggestion is to start with your 4-H agent. Ask your 4-H agent. In some cases, your 4-H agent might already be a gardener and might already know a lot of this stuff to help you. But if not, they're a good place to find other people. You could ask them these questions. Does our county have a horticulture agent? Your 4-H agent will probably know the answer to that. Does our county have a master gardener chapter? And they will probably know the answer to that and how to get you in touch with some of those people. And then another really good question would be, where are the large nurseries and greenhouses in my area? In other words, where are those businesses whose job it is to sell people garden supplies and garden plants? And because that might end up being a very important resource for you as you go on. So really starting with your 4-H agent a lot of times will be a good place to start. Also, your parents might know some of this stuff as well, especially the part about where are those businesses who specialize in garden supplies. Now, your garden design. So this would be the hardest part for me because I've never designed a garden before. I don't know the names of many kinds of plants. I don't know very much about soil types. So if I were doing this, I would need a lot of help with this particular step. But once again, you're really going to need to find an expert, a master gardener, a horticultural agent, or some kind of expert, maybe from one of these garden businesses. They will start probably by asking you about your site. They'll say, well, how big is it? Does it get mostly sun or does it get mostly shade? Is it going to be kind of wet most of the time or is it going to be dry? So you might have to bring them a little bit of information to begin with before that, like kind of pick out this site. And figuring out whether the site has a lot of sun or shade, you might have to kind of stay there for a while and observe it. Like I know around my house which parts get sun and shade just because I observe it over time. I kind of know which parts of my yard get sun for most of the day and which parts get shade most of the day. You might have to kind of observe your area where you're going to put this garden in. And if there are not a lot of big trees around, and especially if your garden is kind of what we call southern exposure, aiming south on the side of a building, it's probably going to get a lot of sun. If it's behind or sort of on the north side of the building, might get less sun. If it's got a lot of trees over it, it might get less sun. So think about that. If it's going to be wet or dry, once again, if it's kind of up relative to the land around it, it will probably what we call well drained. It will drain and it won't stay sopping wet most of the time. And if it's down closer to a ditch or low relative to the land around it, it will probably stay. It can possibly get swampy at times, and this will influence what kind of plants go there. Remember, I think a lot of you have studied watersheds. These are kind of the miniature watersheds in your own lawn. And type of soil, a lot of the types of soil, especially on kind of new bare ground around here, are kind of the same. But your hort agent, your master gardener can help you figure that out. If it's just sort of bare lawn soil, a lot of times it's going to be a lot of clay, a lot of some sand. But those are some of the things that that the people who are selling you plants and helping you design your garden will need to know. And another extremely good resource for you is something called the plant by numbers system. Now, if you have an expert helping you with every stage of your garden design, you might not need to look at this website. But I find this website extremely helpful. It's designed by Lexington, by Lexington Parks, I think, for Lexingtonians. But these rules that they have for garden design are good everywhere in Kentucky, certainly. But even if you were in Tennessee or Ohio, a close by state, they would be good there as well. And I'm going to try to open this up here to show you what this looks like. So it's the plant by number system. And basically what it's asking you, it comes up with a kind of a plan for a garden based on what kind of style of garden you have. Like, will you have a garden that has an asymmetrical shape? In other words, kind of a weird shape that's facing the full sun. So you click that and it shows you what that looks like. So here's asymmetrical. In other words, it's not just a square or a rectangle. It's got a little bit of a round shape to it. And it gives you a big selection of plants. And it kind of shows you approximately where to put those. And this is called layering. A lot of what we do with gardening is we put kind of the bigger plants and the woodier plants kind of either towards the back or the middle. And then we put the shorter plants, and a lot of times our annual plants or the little short flowery plants towards the front or around the edge. That way, as you look at it, it sort of goes up or back. This helps both with all the plants are able to get sun like this, because then the big plants in the back aren't blocking the sun for the smaller plants in the front. And also visually, it allows you to see everything in there. So that's what this plant by number system is designed to do. Also, the plant by number system is specifically designed to be pollinator friendly. It uses either all or mostly native plants. And a lot of these are either pollinator friendly or very good pollinator plants. This is just a start, and you don't have to use every plant it suggests here, but this would be a really good thing maybe to if you kind of decided what the shape of your garden looks like, you've kind of figured out whether it's full sun or not. Maybe print one of these pages out and bring it to the nursery and say, is this a good starting point for me? And can you suggest, if you don't have this exact plant, is there something else that would be a good substitute? And this would be a really good start for your planting system. So full shade, asymmetrical, partial shade with a mulch ring, partial shade next to a sidewalk. So there's different, depending on where your garden's going to be, there's different plans, and it shows you what kinds of plants to put in there. So that's what that is. Trying to find my slideshow. Okay, so that's the plant by number system. And another thing about your garden design, we also want it to be a Monarch Way Station. So in addition to being just sort of generally a nice garden and pollinator friendly, we want it to also be a Monarch Way Station. This actually isn't very difficult to do. Remember when I said it needed to be approximate, or not approximately, but at least 10 feet by 10 feet, 100 square feet? That's the minimum requirements for the Monarch Way Station organization, the system who certifies someone as having a Monarch Way Station. So basically, all you need to do to have a Monarch Way Station is to have some kind of a garden that is at least 100 square feet and has at least 10 native milkweeds in it. So if you have an otherwise sort of normal garden that has good pollinator attracting kind of plants in it, and then you also have at least 10 native milkweeds in your plot, what you do is you kind of write up a description of your garden, you send it to the Monarch Way Station people, so they're monarchwatch.org. They kind of certify you, they say, yes, you're on the Monarch Watch system, they add you to a database, and then you are, I think you still have to buy the sign, but you are eligible to get this sign and put it up in the garden. And we'll buy the signs for you, by the way. What we would really like by the end of this is if you have this garden, this beautiful little garden, and you have at least two signs on it. You might end up with more than that if we're able to, but at least two signs. One that says, 4-H Pollinator Pals, Cortiva, with the names of the pollinator pals on it, maybe some additional pictures, and then right below that, Monarch Way Station. Wouldn't that be cool to have at all of these little gardens that you guys put in? There are 4 kinds of milkweed that are considered to be native to our area. They're listed down there: common milkweed, swamp milkweed, butterfly milkweed, and poke milkweed, which I don't know that one very well. So we really want you to put some milkweed into your garden so that it's a good host plant for monarchs. The nice thing about milkweed is it not only is it a host plant for monarch caterpillars, it's the only thing that they will eat, but it also puts out a lot of flowers, and the milkweed flowers attract all kinds of pollinators, not just monarchs. So that's why we like milkweed so much. So that we really want you to include some milkweed in this. One nice thing about milkweed, I'll mention this in a minute too, but I believe, if not all, most milkweed species are perennial. When most of them put up kind of soft, or what we call herbaceous, stalks and leaves every year, those parts die back, but then they grow up again the next year, and you don't have to reseed them. So that's another nice thing about milkweed species. So yeah, that leads me to the next topic here. A little bit about garden design is you need to think about what we call perennials versus annuals. This is another one of those things that if you're a gardener and you hear the word perennial, that means a kind of flower to you. When I hear the word perennial, that means something that happens all year, like the mail truck. It runs all year, so it's perennial. But for a gardener, a perennial means a kind of plant that grows every year. It comes back every year without having to replant it. And an annual is something that you have to plant the seed every year. It grows and it dies, and unless its own seeds have fallen and replanted itself, you will have to go back in and replant it. So most of your gardens will be a mix of annuals and perennials, but I am going to advise you and suggest that the more perennials you're able to get in there, think about that garden design we just saw, that plant by numbers. It might be really nice if a whole lot of the middle part and a whole lot of that sort of secondary edge is mostly perennials, and then maybe on the very outside edge you've got some annuals. The annuals tend to grow smaller. That way you have less things to replace every year, and the annuals are on the outside so that when you replace them, it's easy to get to them. So perennials are a very nice thing for your garden, and there are lots of perennials that put out flowers that are good for pollinators. And once again, milkweeds, at least common milkweed, butterfly bush, and swamp milkweed are perennials. They come back every year. Another thing to think about with your garden is what we call herbaceous versus woody. Most annual plants are what we call herbaceous. That means they're very soft. They grow up, they're mostly just either green or pretty flower. They're just green soft stuff and flower soft stuff, and they don't ever get any wood on them, and then they die back that year. There are also perennial plants that are herbaceous. Milkweeds fall into this category. So a milkweed is what we call a herbaceous perennial. It grows up, it's very soft, it dies back, but it grows back the next year. It never develops a woody center that stays there forever. But there are also what we call woody perennials that are good pollinator plants. You really should try to include some of these in your garden, because these are the kinds of things that are going to come back year after year. They are going to need very little maintenance compared to some of these other things. They will provide their own shade, so they'll help kill weeds underneath themselves because they'll shade out their own weeds. And these can also even end up providing shade for the building. So an example there, Eastern redbud. This is a very common tree that grows in Kentucky. People plant it in their yards. It can even be put into very small spaces and pruned so that it stays small. But it's considered a very good woody native pollinator plant for Kentucky. And what I have down there, this link, bee-friendly shrubs and trees. This is a handout that people in our department developed a couple of years ago they basically looked at a whole bunch of different woody kinds of plants. So these are shrubs and trees, things that stay there for a very long time. And they evaluated them for which are the best for pollinators, and very important, when do they bloom? Look at this. So it shows some of the different woody plants that are good for pollinators in our area. So we're what we call the Ohio Valley region. We're part of the Ohio River watershed. And it not only does it go through each kind of woody plant, it says how good of a pollinating plant they are out of a 4-star system. Once again, Eastern Redbud, which is one of my favorite trees. 4 stars, look at that. Native plant. And look at this, it shows when they bloom. One really good thing to think about with your garden plots. We hear this from beekeepers all the time. So many people who plant gardens for pollinators, they have a whole bunch of flowers that come up in the spring, and then they all kind of die back, and then either the rest of the summer or all the way through the fall, they may not have any more flowers. So it's only good as a pollinator garden for a month or two. It would be really nice if you could, especially if you can use this chart. What if you are able to put in a few shrubs or trees that bloom through different parts of the year? And this goes onto a second page as well. So maybe pick 1 or 2 plants that bloom in March and April and May, 1 or 2 that bloom in June and July, and then a couple that bloom in August and September, so that your pollinators can get access to pollen and nectar all spring, all summer, and all late summer. Beekeepers often complain that there is, in particular, right in the middle of summer, there's not a lot of pollen available. I mean, not a lot of pollen or nectar available. And you can see it outside right now. It's starting to get hot and dry out there. There's less flowering plants. Not only is it hard for bees and other pollinators to get nectar, it's hard for them to get liquids at all. So having plants that provide pollen and nectar in the middle of summer and then going into fall is really valuable for our pollinators. So I encourage you to use this resource. To get back to our slideshow here. Some things to think about when you're building. Your site that you're building in might require either some tilling up of grass or removing old plants. There's a video there. There's actually a lot of videos on how to kind of install a garden. Look those up on your own. You can ask me for more examples. But this video shows how to break ground in a new garden. And what she's showing on this video, she's basically starting with some grass and how to go from there. She kind of rakes up the grass and puts some other stuff on there. Another thing you'll want to do is decide if you're going to basically need to put in what we call a raised bed. Sometimes when you're building on kind of bare ground, you might decide, okay, this ground is too dry. I'm going to need to contain my soil, so I'm going to put some railroad ties or some rocks in kind of a shape and pour some soil in there so that I'll have a raised bed, and that way we'll have some very nice loose soil for your plants to grow in. So you'll have to determine if that step is needed. If you're building in an old garden, you might not have to do that, a garden that was already there. But if you're starting from scratch right on a chunk of lawn, you might need to do this step. And then right there underlined, do all this breaking ground and building the beds before you do any buying of plants and other supplies. Because if you buy plants and they're sitting around while you take a few days to put in your soil or whatever you need to do, those things can die. So build your garden plot. Like I said, you might need somebody with a truck to bring in some bags of soil or a truckload of soil, and bring in railroad ties or rocks or something like that. And then you're at now that you've got soil, now that you've got a raised bed if you need it, now you actually go and buy and plant those seeds that your expert has told you are the right plants to put in based on your design. And then the last step will be installing signs. We'll help you with that part. And then the long-term maintenance. So you're going to need to identify long-term volunteers to help keep this garden plot going for as long as possible. Once again, your master gardeners, your extension office employees, younger 4-H'ers, or people who work and live in these buildings where the garden is planted are all great choices for this. you'll need to set up some kind of a maintenance schedule. So you'll have to think about every year what's going to have to happen. One thing that you would have to do, for instance, is if you have a lot of annual plants planted, you'll need to remove the old dead annual parts, and you might have to plant new ones. So you might have to buy new seeds every year. If you have herbaceous perennials like milkweeds, what those do again is your milkweed grows up new every year, puts out a lot of flowers and milkweed leaves and all that stuff, and then it dies at the end of the summer. Sometimes you need to go in and pull out just all those dead parts, and that's all you have to do though, because the new one, it's actually the same one. It's the roots are already there, grows up again that year. So that you just need to get rid of the old stuff. If you have woody perennials like those red buds or crab apples or some of the other shrubs and trees, you might have to trim them every once in a while if they're getting too big for the space, shading out all of your other plants. You might have to trim them down a little bit. You might have to examine them for disease. If something doesn't quite look right, you might need your horticulture agent to come take a look and see if they have some kind of disease. Weeding will be a big part of this. So many gardens fall by the wayside because no one will regularly weed them. And after about 1 year of nobody weeding them, a garden has to basically be redone. So weeding needs to be done at least 2 or 3 times a season, probably more. And this would be going in with your hands and with a little hoe or a little shovel and ripping out those weeds. Because with your pollinator garden, you're probably not going to be wanting to use a lot of herbicides. So you want to remove most of these weeds by hand. And then pests. There's also going to be things like insect pests and diseases that have to be looked out for. And this would involve basically while you're in there weeding, take a look and see if your plants are being attacked by something. And that's when you would send it to somebody like me to see, hey, what is this bug? Is this something that's going to really harm my plant over time? And when it comes to insecticides, you might be able to use a handful of insecticides on your garden plants. Maybe not as much with herbicides. Herbicides are what we use to kill weeds, but pesticides like insecticides to kill certain bugs might be used here and there. And then occasionally you might need to add new topsoil or mulch, something like that. And you might have to wipe down any signage, reorganize rocks, things like that. So, and I'll show you, we kind of have a little place where you can write this stuff down. So now what I want you to think about is sort of where you are right now. I wrote down some of the things that I already know. I know some of the counties, you have more help than others, and we understand that. Some of you are basically just one person and alone in one county trying to get this done, and we will help you as much as you can. And then some of these other counties, we kind of know some of the things about what they're doing. So I think Fayette County was thinking about maybe putting a garden at the extension office. Jamie Dockery is your hort agent. You guys know who your 4-H agent is. There are a ton of nurseries and garden centers around here. I would encourage you all, whatever your county is, to go to one of the ones that are locally owned instead of something like a Home Depot or Lowe's. If you go to the ones that are locally owned, a lot of times the owner is there. They're standing around there, able to talk to you. Whereas if it's Home Depot, it might be somebody like me working there who doesn't really know anything about gardens. I just know how to run the scanner at the register. So the locally owned ones would be the place to go. So in around Lexington, we've got King's Garden, Wilson's Nursery, Mickler's Nursery. There's a really nice one. I forget what it's called. I think it's Springs out closer to Jessamine County, and then all of our surrounding counties. A lot of them have big nurseries there too. Basically, I would suggest picking the one that's closest to you, that's the biggest, and go and start chatting with those people. Kenton County, I think you guys have talked about putting it at the Kenton Lands office. And Brandon George, who I've not met, I believe that's your horticulture agent. Clark County, it sounds like you already got it going there. But your Academy kids are there to help with that. And actually, it sounds like Alec might be helping the Academy kids, but that's okay because Alec will have things to do like setting up a maintenance schedule and maybe doing some education there. So think about where you are right now. What we would like to happen next is, so by July 8th, if you haven't already done so, find a location for your garden and get started with that design. Find somebody that will help you design the garden, to look at this space and say, okay, you're going to need to do this and this to it. You probably need to think about these kinds of plants. You are going to be sun instead of shade or whatever. So by July 8th, we kind of want you to know that part of it. You don't have to have a full design yet. So July 8th is not very far from now. That's something like 2.5 weeks or something. And somewhere in the middle there is 4th of July, and everybody is going to be gone on vacation, and including like your nurseries might be closed, your 4-H agents might be on vacation, and so forth. So that's not really a lot of time. So you kind of need to get started with this, like maybe even tomorrow, at least try to figure out who some of these people are who can help you. So get started on finding a spot for your garden. And then closer to the end of July, so July 22nd, we want a basic design for your garden. We kind of want to know what it looks like, where it's going to be. You might not know all of the exact plants yet, but we kind of like a list of the plants that you think are going to be in there, and also any supplies that you need. And so what I have done is I have made kind of a checklist that I'm going to send you guys an email. I'm going to send it to you in a Word format, Word document. So you might think of things to add to this that I didn't think of. But this is something that you can keep either on your computer, or you can print it out, and you can keep track of things as you go, as you design your pollinator garden. So we've got things here like location. So where's the address for this place going to be? Who are your design experts going to be that are going to help you figure out what this thing looks like and what plants to put in? We put in the links for those some of those design resources that we talked about, a place for you to put in the size of the plot. Materials needed for construction. Are you going to need railroad ties? Are you going to need shovels? Are you going to need soil? Try to figure out how much of that stuff you're going to need and write down the cost. We can help you buy some of that stuff. And some of it you might need to figure out how to procure in some other way, like from sponsors, but hopefully we can help pay for most of that stuff. A list of people who are going to help you install this garden, like friends, family, other 4-Hers. We've also got a place for you to design kind of the sketch, the design of your garden. It doesn't have to be a very good drawing, but what we kind of like to see is, what's the shape going to look like? What are the buildings that are going to be around it? And kind of measure those sides of those buildings so we get an idea of the size, measure the different sides of your garden, show any sidewalks or other features that are going to be there. Maybe if there's a water hose that you know where it's going to be, maybe we'll draw that on there. And then if you start to know where your plants are going to be, kind of show where you think your plants are going to be in there as well. So your garden design sketch, and then a big list of the plants that you are going to put in. The name of the plant. Are you going to be buying it as a seed and putting it in as a seed, or are you going to be buying it as a whole plant and planting it? Is it going to be an annual or perennial? Once again, annuals are things that basically live for 1 year and then die, and then you have to replant them again. Or is it a perennial, things that keep coming back year after year? Is it herbaceous or woody? Herbaceous means kind of weedy and green and soft. Almost all annuals, I guess every annual as far as I know, is herbaceous, but perennials can be either herbaceous or woody, depending on if they get woody stalks. And then how many of those are you going to get? Oh, I know a thing I probably should have added in here already, is cost. So I'm going to go ahead and add another column for that right now. Insert columns to the right. Cost. So those are, and if you might think of more things to add. And then we've got kind of a maintenance schedule down here. For one thing, we've got a place to list who are going to be kind of your committee for long-term maintenance. Who are going to be the people who can maintain this legacy when you are off gallivanting in California or Hawaii going to college or something like that? Is it going to be your extension agent? Is that going to be one of the people who maintains this? Is it going to be a school teacher or school principal? You might end up with 4 or 5 people in there who are kind of in charge of maintaining this garden over time. And then, I need to bold and center these. There we go. What's going to happen every season? What's going to happen in spring? You're going to have to remove last year's debris. You might have to plant a new annual seed. You might think of some more tasks to put in there. You might need to buy new seeds or plants. Summer, there's going to be a lot of weeding in the summer. You might have to scout for pests. You might have to water it during droughts. So some of the supplies you might need are garden hoses and sprinklers. In the fall, you can remove debris. You'll need to remove debris in both spring and fall, because in spring, debris from other people's plants are going to settle in your garden. But in the fall, you can remove your garden's own debris. You can kind of clear that stuff out. And then the winter, you might think of other things to do, but you might have to plan. You might have to plan, okay, what annuals are we going to do next year? You might say, well, one of our redbud trees died, so what are we going to plant there instead? So that's kind of a checklist that will hopefully help keep you organized as you're going through this process. All right, so that's pretty much the whole presentation I have for you guys. I'm going to look in the chat here and see what people have said. Oh, somebody, Ashley suggested Springhouse Nursery. That's the name of one of the big nurseries around here. Ashley also put in some links for how to read more about the Monarch Way Stations and what those are. The bee-friendly shrubs and handouts. Oh, plant by numbers. Oh, and Annabeth was here, but her internet would not work. Oh, but what I'm going to do is put on. I'm going to put this whole Zoom call on. I'll probably put it on YouTube. That's the easiest place to put it. And I'm going to send you a link to links to those bee-friendly shrubs, the plant by numbers, and I will send you the Word document that we just looked at, planning your pollinator garden. And so who else has questions about this while everyone is here and awake and lively and excited?
Hey, Blake, can I add something?
Yes.
So, as you were talking, I wanted to share that any of our pollinator pals that are interested, August the 24th, it's a Wednesday, is 4-H Natural Resource Day at the State Fair. And I generally have some State Fair passes, and I'd be happy to give any of our pollinator pals, and I could even provide a pass for your 4-H agent or 4-H program assistant or your parent, if your parent wants to bring you. But if you'd like to, create a display about your garden, or just be present in Cloverville, kind of talk about what Pollinator Pals is. I'll put you can always contact Blake. He knows how to get in touch with me, and I know many of you, but you can just reach out and let me know. And that would be another great way to kind of share what you're doing as a Pollinator Pal. And you could wear your Pollinator Pal t-shirt and all of those things. So
yeah, so what could they do something like could they do something like come there and maybe do Cloverville for a few hours and then get a few hours to like walk around the fair or something like that? Yeah, that would be a really fun day.
Yeah. Yeah, you could choose, if you wanted to stick around maybe like from 10 to 12 in Cloverville, and then go have lunch and see the fair in the afternoon, or if you'd rather, stick around in Cloverville from like 1 to 3 and hang out at the fair in the morning. Very flexible. So yeah, I'll put the date in the chat. And if that's something that you're interested in, and I know some of you have done that before. I think Colton and Catherine and Alec, you've displayed different exhibits before. So yeah, anybody that's interested, just let me know.
That's a really good idea. Anybody else have any other info or any questions? All right, well, we've gone about 1 hour, so that's kind of a nice breaking point. I'll stop this. I'll send you guys those documents and stuff, and put this Zoom up so that you can see it again when you need to. If anybody needs, I think at some point somebody wanted just the PowerPoint by themselves. If you want that too, we could probably figure out a way to share that as well. But we'll definitely put the video up. I'll check the chat, and no one has any more. So August 24th is Natural Resource Day. All right, well, I guess I will stop the recording and allow you guys to get back to what you were doing. Hopefully, thinking about pollinator gardens. Okay, no one has any questions. I'm going to end it. That's the last warning.
Yeah.
Thanks, Blake.
Okay, see you guys later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.